Hey everybody, welcome back to Dagish America Presents. I'm your host, Ben Harrell, and we're back with episode 3 of season 6, where we're focusing on leadership in the fumigation industry. So far this season, we've talked about leading with safety and how to master your time in a fast-paced environment. But here's the thing, no leader can succeed alone. At the heart of every safe, successful fumigation project is a high-performing team. In today's episode, we're going to talk about what it takes to build and lead teams that not only get the job done, but do it with skill, consistency, and safety in mind. Because in a high-risk environment like ours, performance is more than just speed. It's trust, communication, and execution under pressure. From hiring and training to motivating and retaining top talent, strong teams don't happen by accident. They're built intentionally. And to help us break that down, we've invited Dexter Jarrett, District Manager from Cardinal Professional Products, to talk about how he's helped develop and manage successful fumigation crews. So, without further delay, please help me welcome Dexter to the podcast. Dexter, how you doing today?
I'm good, Ben. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to finally have an opportunity to have you on the podcast. You know, we've known each other for several years now, and I know that, you have vast experience in many facets when it comes to fumigation. And one in particular is managing fumigation teams, which I think that, from my outside perspective, I haven't had a chance to work with you in the same organization before, but from an outside perspective, I always have seen you and your fumigation teams as really high performing people. So I can't thank you enough for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk to me today.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Again, we go back a little ways, and, I think it's a blessing that we connected years and years, many years ago, and it just it's good to see everything comes full circle where we still can continue our friendship and inside the industry and outside the industry. But yeah, I'm glad for the invite and that you invited me to come here.
Yeah, well, thanks again. So I always start every podcast out kind of the same way by giving like a new guest maybe an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about themselves and let the listeners know, anybody who may not know who you are, just to kind of let them know a little bit about you. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, Dexter.
Sure. My full name is Dexter Jarrett. I've been in the industry going on 26 years now. The majority of that was with the company of McLeod Pest Control. Been about 24 years with them. I'm currently working for Cardinal Pro Products, probably about 2.5 years with them now. So been around the industry a little bit, met a lot of great people, learned a lot of things. I've been married for 28 years, 4 kids, 9 grandkids. So pretty full life, and hopefully that's it. I don't need any more grandkids, and hopefully that's where it stops.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll have great grandkids to look forward to at some point. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Further down the line. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, I know, before you went to work for Cardinal, I know you worked in operations with McLeod for many years, both as a fumigator. I think you started out as a fumigator, and then you worked your way into management. And I know you managed fumigation teams for a long time. And as I said at the beginning, I mean, very impressive how you managed your fumigation team. So when it came time to talk about kind of building high-performing teams in our industry, I couldn't think of anybody better to talk to about it. So I wanted to start out just by kind of asking you, what makes a high-performing fumigation team? I mean, how do you define a high-performing fumigation team? What are some of those key qualities you look for in those people?
Sure. And thanks for the compliment, Ben. Yeah. So great question. I think, to have a high performance team, one of the things I look for when talking about fumigation and creating a fumigation team is experience. Having knowledge of a particular fumigant, whatever fumigant that is that you're using, I think it's very important. I look for very good communicators for that team. I look for individuals that are very respectful. You can have a team of fumigators and one may not like the other, or one may have a problem with the other, and it'll throw off the whole vibe of the team. So making sure that everyone respects each other, everybody on that team is accountable. And I think one of the most important things is as you know this as well as I do, when you're performing fumigations, you need to be able to adapt at any moment. So those team members will need to be able to do that as well.
You're right on point there. And actually, you brought up a couple things that I didn't think about, in the past, and something that we don't talk about a lot when we're talking about building a fumigation team. We always talk about communication, but you keyed in on being able to get along with people who are maybe different than you. And what I mean by that is, different personality types sometimes clash, and having the ability to work with people who have a different personality than you and at least get along for that short period of time when you're on the job site. That's very, very important. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people think about.
Right. Well, and the thing is that, we have different people from different cultures, different backgrounds. They see things different, and bringing those individuals together to perform a task, it's a challenge in itself. And we'll probably get deeper into that, but bringing those individuals together to understand each other and know that we're coming together to complete a task. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So and another thing that you mentioned too was experience. So I know that when you have a well-oiled machine, a well-oiled fumigation team, so to speak, most of those individuals are going to be very educated, different levels of education. Some will be more educated on the fumigants than others, of course, depending on their level of experience. But obviously, when you hire into the company, usually, sometimes you get lucky and you may hire somebody that already has fumigation experience, but I think sometimes most of the time, you end up hiring people who may not have any industry experience.
Great.
So if you're hiring somebody in to become part of your fumigation team, which is very tough, by the way, because we work very long and very weird hours a lot of times, a lot of holidays, a lot of weekends, things like that. So sometimes it can be a little difficult to find people from outside the industry to come into the industry and work that. So with all that being said, what kind of traits or background do you look for, or maybe that you prioritize when you're kind of looking to build out that fumigation crew or bring people in from outside the industry?
Like you said, that's difficult to pinpoint that perfect individual that's going to fit your team. But what I've been able to do, from my experience, what I've been able to do is I've always had one or two guys that are experienced that I could put the newer guys with to help them through that process. Some of the things I look for is somebody that pays attention to detail, somebody that maybe they have a good safety record. And I may not be able to tell, maybe they come from a different industry. I may not be able to tell about their safety record, but maybe they have a good driving record. That tells me something about how they feel about safety. But being detail orientated in my process of hiring, I developed some questions to try to get an idea. Are they the type of individual that pays attention to detail? I think that's very important.
So you bring up some really good points there, especially when it comes to the safety aspect of it. It's really difficult, I think, just like you were saying. It's really difficult to find out how important safety is to these people, especially if they come from outside of the industry. And it's really hard sometimes to tell, maybe what kind of safety culture their previous employer held.
Sure.
So you're absolutely right. Tailoring some of those interview questions to specifically what you're looking for is really important. So, and I love the fact that you keyed into things like attention to detail, safety, things like that, because those are all things that, while they can be taught, I guess, people's attention to detail, and some of that stuff is ingrained, in my opinion. Whether or not people have a safety culture in their mind, again, I think it could be taught, but most of that stuff is ingrained in them. I'm confident you can teach anybody how to fumigate. It's complex, it's complicated, it's not easy, it's a niche market that is difficult, but it can be taught. Some of the things that I think are more difficult to be taught are safety culture, attention to detail, organization, how to manage personalities. So I loved how when you were talking about having a very specific set of interview questions that you ask, that you're angling in that direction instead of a direction of like, what do you know about phosphine, or what do you know about methyl bromide, or whatever that case is? So.
Yeah. Again, I think it's very important to identify those individuals. As we know, and I may be changing the subject a little bit, but as we know, fumigation is hard work, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not putting groceries in a bag or anything like that. It's hard work, long hours, odd hours, and trying to find the individual that has a good work ethic, a hard worker, and takes pride in his work. I think it's important. For me, my thing is that I try to spend some individual time with the person that I'm going to put on my team. I just want to see who he is and or she is, and see what kind of personality they have, how they feel about certain things work related, and just get a feel of who I'm going to put on my team that I can feel comfortable with, of them being safe, getting the job done, and working with others.
Yeah, and those are the three most important things. It kind of in order a little bit. Staying safe being the primary one, working with others, which is also very important, but then also getting the job done. And I do like the fact that you mentioned pride as well, because I think you have to find people who do take pride in their work, because we work odd hours, we work long hours, and not everybody is really capable of doing kind of what we do. And I know that sounds like a conceit, and I don't mean it to, but
You're right.
Not everybody's willing to work holiday weekends and overnights and really long hours. And so I know back many years ago, I won't say how many, but many years ago when I was just a fumigator, I did take a lot of pride in being able to do something that not a lot of people I felt were willing or able to do. And so I had a sense of pride of accomplishment when I got done with every single fumigation that I did. And those are the kinds of people that you have to hire. Those are the kinds of people that you want on your team, the people who take pride in it. They don't look at a long day and think, well, they may at the beginning of the day think, oh, geez, man, this is going to be a long day. This is going to be tough. It's hot. I'm tired and all of that. But then at the end of the day, they look back on that day and they think, wow, look, it was a really tough job. It was a really tough day, but boy, look at everything that me and the team got done today, and have that sense of pride. It's so important to have people on your team like that.
I agree 1,000%. I've experienced, as you can imagine, different types of individuals who show up on a fumigation and they were there an hour, and I said, hey, it's probably best that you go home. Yep. Because I didn't want it. Part of our, being a fumigation manager is making sure everybody goes home safely. And if somebody doesn't really want to be there, or they don't feel like they possess the skills to be there, I don't want them on the site. So, yeah, I think it's very important to make sure you got the right people.
Well, and you bring up something really interesting there too, talking about, if somebody's there an hour and they're just not performing the way that you expected them to, and sending them home. Because, really, to be honest with you, that's not just always people who are low performing people. Sometimes your high performing people may be having an off day as well. And you're absolutely right. Even your high performers, whether maybe they have something personal going on at home and their head's just not in it. And I love that you said that, because if their head's not in it, it could be a safety concern. And you as a manager have to recognize that and be able to tell them, hey, or ask them, hey, what's going on? Is everything okay? Look, I can tell, that maybe, today's not the day for you. Do me a favor. Let's knock off today, go home, figure out whatever you need to figure out, and let's come back the next day and tackle it again. Man, what a great attitude to have on that, instead of, hey, I don't know what's going on. You better buckle down and put your head down and get to it.
Yeah.
That's where risk comes in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I know, we talk a lot about how difficult our job can be, fumigation can be, and how important it is to have those high performing people that are safety minded and live in that safety culture environment and are highly technical. But they are long hours. They are weekends. How do you keep those people motivated? It is physically demanding. It's very often unpredictable, which you alluded to also. How do you keep those people motivated on that job?
When I found out, Ben, is that most people are motivated by money, right?
Yeah.
So,
fair enough. Yeah.
So having some kind of a monetary bonus or something along those lines typically keeps them motivated, keeps them, that they want to get the job done. They want to get the job done correctly, because they know there's an additional pay at the end of the day.
Sure.
The other things I've always focused on as far as keeping them motivated is making sure that, while we're on the job, that they're comfortable as can be. And it can be things like making sure that we have a decent hotel for them. If it's a long fumigation, they have a nice hotel that they're staying in. They're not coming back into some crappy hotel after working a long day. So providing good food for them, making sure they have cold drinks, and little things like that typically will keep them motivated throughout that fumigation. And then they look forward to the next one. My guys that I've had over the years, they kind of look forward to fumigations, because it was sort of a break from the everyday work, but also they were able to have a little fun, after we got everything completed. After we got the building under gas, we were able to go out and have a nice dinner and talk and joke around, and they come back and they got a nice bed to sleep in and get charged up for the next day. So, making sure those little things are taken care of, make sure they have the right equipment so they're not getting on the job and being frustrated. That would upset some people if they get to the job and you don't have the lift or you don't have the proper equipment. You can easily frustrate somebody, especially if they're already hot and they just want to get in and get the job done. So I find that having some kind of monetary bonus always helps, and then making sure they're comfortable on that job because they'll be motivated to come back and do it again.
Sure, yeah. I mean, and you're absolutely right. I think a full belly with decent food goes a long way on a fumigation. Yes. You have to be careful. You don't want to eat a heavy lunch because then when you come back from lunch, maybe you're a little sleepy, but but good food, plenty of water. You have to stay hydrated. Most of the fumigations take place in the summertime. One other thing that I would mention that I think has always impressed me by good leaders like yourself are, and this is very cliche, but it's cliche for a reason because it's the truth. I think that one of the easiest ways to motivate people as a leader is to jump in and do some of the work yourself. You have to lead by example. You have to jump right in and sweat and create that sweat equity along with everybody else. And if you do that, then you get respect. People understand you're not asking them to do anything that you weren't willing to do, which there's that cliched part, and you hear that a lot. But again, it's a cliche for a reason because it's the truth. If your team sees that you're willing to dig right in and do the hard work right along with them, they're going to respect you, and that's going to motivate them to work harder.
Ben, you've heard it as well as I did. You've heard it so many times where guys run fumigation and that leader just kind of pointed, what needs to be done, and he goes to sit back in his truck under the in the air conditioning, and you hear those guys. You hear that. I mean, I'm glad you said that because I've witnessed it myself when I was coming up in the industry, but also I've heard guys that work for me that come from other branches, other offices that says the same thing. The person that they were under didn't do certain things and only kind of sat in their truck and kind of pointed to what needs to be done. So, yeah, I'm glad you said that because that's very important to see your leader, the person that's leading the team, get dirty as well.
Yeah. You lead in the trenches, not from
there you go.
a mile back.
There you go.
So, yeah. So in your experience, what are some of the most common challenges that you've seen that actually prevents teams from being able to work effectively?
I think a lack of experience. Teammates with lack of experience, they seem to slow down the process, which of course causes a challenge with guys that has experience. And that kind of, I guess from my perspective, I've had several guys on my team that's been with me for a while. I didn't really have to tell them what to do. We go through fumigation. They start off, they just go and grab what they need to grab and they go and get things done. And then newer guys would try and just step in and help, and they weren't working fast enough or they just weren't experienced with it. So it was my job to try to balance the both. So I would always try to team up with an experienced person with an unexperienced person. And then that was part of their training, right? So they would train the guys that didn't have the experience. So that was one of the challenges that I've always had because we had, you have turnover, you have different technicians come in, they're not going to know what to do. So that was always a challenge that I had. And the other one was just making sure that everybody respected each other, regardless of your experience, regardless of who that individual was that you were working with. You didn't have to like them, but you needed to respect them.
Yeah.
I've experienced some situations where two guys just didn't like each other for one reason or the other that I had to kind of separate and put them with other people. That wasn't a common issue, but that was an issue that I did have to deal with on several occasions. So inexperienced technicians, fumigators will kind of, slow down the process. I think that was one of the biggest issues. And the other one was making sure that teammates not respecting each other, that they did respect each other.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you actually found some pretty good solutions to some of those problems. And the key to that being communication. So explaining to your experienced team, hey, look, we got some technicians on here that are a little less experienced. They're going to slow us down a little bit. Be patient with them. teach them the right way. I'm going to assign them to you so they can learn, so they can get faster. And then that snowball effect happens where now you have more educated people, so things speed back up. And then communicating with your team members, it's never ideal if you have two qualified, high-performing team members that just can't get along. But hey, let's face it, people are people. It happens, unfortunately, sometimes. And it's unfortunate when it does that you have to separate them onto two different teams and try to still navigate that and manage that. But I mean, it sounds like you were able to do that successfully and maintain a level of excellence there. So.
Yeah. Well, one thing I had to do, one thing I did do is even prior to the fumigation season starting was to get those guys together. And, because it's small things like, pulling tape, there's a way to pull tape, right? Like, you don't break a little piece and pull and break. So, I would assign them to certain individuals, and it's usually what I call a fumigation team leader. And then he'll have two guys under him that he trains. So I would break out times throughout the winter where, we would spend time just talking about fumigation, different fumigants. And then the hard part, which is the sealing part, we work on some of that stuff. Just, whether we seal up a few doors at the branch or something like that. But that was my way of getting ahead of the game when the time came to fumigate. They would have some kind of idea of what they were doing.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned training in advance because, man, I tell you, that is invaluable. Because getting some training for some of the basics in advance is going to save you time on the actual fumigation, which is also going to save frustration and headaches and some of those personality conflicts. So doing that in advance, I mean, what a great way to do that, And I'm also glad you mentioned training because not only do we have to train new hires on the technical aspect, how to tape a door. I mean, some of us have been in the industry for years. We don't even think about it. It's second nature. We just know how to tape steel doors whether they're overhead, man doors, whatever the case is. But people coming in new, they may not know exactly how to tape them. So there are technical aspects to it, how to run lines, whatnot. But sometimes we have to train these people in teamwork and we have to train them in safety culture. I did say some of that stuff, it's better to have people who have that ingrained in them. But sometimes you have to train them to your way. Even though they have that safety culture ingrained, working around fumigants is a little bit different than working around other chemicals, maybe. So you may have to train them a little bit more on safety culture or teamwork with you. So I guess what I'm trying to ask here is, how do you train those new hires, not just on the technical aspects, but have you ever done anything to train people on teamwork and like safety culture as well?
I think just training, and with McLeod, we were fortunate enough to have individuals on our safety side that, fumigation was part of that, right? Like we had a fumigation manager that set up a training session to train on fumigation, not only to set up a fumigation, but the fumigate itself. As you know as well as I do, a lot of people, when they hear fumigant, it's a scary thing. And just to get them to not be afraid of the fumigant, but just respect it. Respect the fumigant that you're going to be using. So that was part of the training, the safety part of it. Of course, we spent a lot of one-on-one time with individuals that's going to be on the fumigation. And again, going back to the training part of it, just understanding that not everybody learns the same way. Some people learn by hands-on. Some people learn by maybe reading it, what the task will be. But just making sure that everybody's on the same page, when it comes to the training, everybody's getting the same training and everybody knows exactly what to expect.
Yeah, you saying everybody getting the same training is really important too. I mean, there's been many, many times that I've seen people out in the field that one fumigator will train somebody one way, and then another fumigator will train somebody a completely different way. And then the third fumigator will train somebody a third way. So having standardized training, both for safety and then in the technical aspects, I think is very critical. There are some aspects of our industry, like the fumigation work, that you can change. We talked about taping a door and how important it is. There are a couple of different ways that doors can be taped. So there is a little bit of leeway, as long as it holds gas, there's a little bit of leeway on how it can be done. There are some aspects that are label requirements that you cannot deviate from because it's law. So you always have to start with all of the training being the same. And then people have to be able to figure out what they can modify and what they can't modify.
Exactly.
from that training. Yeah.
I agree. Exactly.
So I only have one question left for you, and I always ask everybody that's on the podcast a variation of this question. What advice would you give to a new fumigation leader, a new manager that's trying to maybe take like an average crew and turn them into a high-performing crew?
I think I mentioned it earlier. I think understanding your team is very important. If I was to advise someone, I would advise them if they could get some emotional intelligence training, because that teaches you to, that assisted me the most. We were fortunate enough to get it with McLeod, but that teaches you to how to read emotions from individuals, read emotions from our team, and then I could figure out what's the best way to communicate with them. As we know, again, not everybody learns the same. Everybody's different, but just knowing exactly who you're dealing with and how to communicate with that individual would help us, because then you can put them in the right place. Individual that if he's shaky, he probably won't be on the fumigation, but individual that doesn't communicate as well, I don't want him performing certain tasks. Again, like we mentioned earlier, not everybody works in the same pace. But not everybody learns the same. So knowing that person, knowing that individual, knowing you can understand if he's having a bad day. And if you can't read that individual, you can't read the room of the team when you're talking to him, I think that can cause a problem, not being able to see what's going on.
I love the fact that you talked about like emotional training, because I also went through with a previous employer, I went through what was called leadership training. And a big portion of that leadership training did not focus on the day-to-day operations. It focused on exactly what you're talking about, being able to read different personality types, being able to manage different personality types, how to communicate with those different personality types. That is the most important tool that a manager, any manager for any industry, can absolutely utilize, because everybody, like you said, every person that works for you is going to have a different personality. They're going to look at things different, and you have to be able to read their personality and then change your management techniques to fit their personality. That's how you get the most out of that individual, in my opinion. So you saying that, you're absolutely right. So that advice that you're giving, a potential new leader, that advice right there is absolute gold.
Yeah. And see, Ben, I spent almost 8 years in the Marine Corps. And so, of course, I had contact with people from all over, different people, different backgrounds, different cultures. And I've always thought that I knew people, right? Like I figured I could talk to somebody for 10, 15 minutes and kind of get a good idea who that person is. But when I went through this emotional intelligence class, I'm like, yeah, I didn't know what I thought I knew, right?
Yeah.
So now I have a really good feeling if I talk to somebody 10 or 15 minutes, I can pretty much figure them out. So yeah. I think that would help anybody that's trying to build a team, a high performing team. I think you definitely need to be able to read the room.
You're absolutely right. So that's all I had for you today, Dexter. Listen, man, again, I'm so happy that I got an opportunity to talk to you today on the podcast. Like I said, I've known you forever. I have huge respect for you and everything that you've done for our industry. And I was so glad to give everybody else out there an opportunity to hear some insight from you when it comes to trying to build and then manage some of these high-performing fumigation teams.
I really appreciate it, Ben. Like I said, I've always looked up to you, man, like a big brother. And,
no.
you've always come with the good advice, and you always answer the phone when I called. So, when you contact me about this, there's no way I could say no. Of course, and they give me another opportunity to hang out with you a little bit. I appreciate it, man. I really do.
Yeah, the pleasure's all mine. Thanks again.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks again to Dexter for sharing his perspective. Building strong teams in our industry isn't just about filling roles. It's about developing people who trust each other, communicate well, and hold themselves accountable to the highest safety and performance standards. On the next episode of Dagish America Presents, we'll shift our focus to mentorship, how experienced professionals can help the next generation of fumigation leaders grow, adapt, and thrive. And if you have any questions or ideas for future episodes, please drop us a line at podcast@dagishamerica.com, or you can reach us on our social media sites. Until then, I'm Ben Harrell. Take care out there and keep building those great teams.